Welcome to our podcast, Just Us, where the premise is based on the scripture from 2 Corinthians 7:2, make room for us in your hearts. Today, we are going to talk about colorism, what it means, the history of it, and how it has affected us and our special guest in this episode. We hope you stay tuned.
Yes, and you could find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Please give us a 5-star rating and review so we could continue doing this work.
It's going to be the tip of the iceberg, and there's going to be more podcasts to come in this topic, so we hope you stay tuned and enjoy today's episode.
Hello, everyone. This episode, we're going to definitely be diving into colorism. And before we dive into colorism, for those who don't know, I definitely want to give you the definition that we found on what colorism is. So colorism is prejudice or discrimination against individuals with a dark skin tone, typically among people of the same ethnic or racial group. So this is what colorism is, right? And I want to give you a brief history lesson on how it started with colorism. So one of the things when slavery happened, Willie Lynch and the Jim Crow law, what they were scared of was slaves to revolt. So what they did was they did a strategic plan that had slaves that were in the home and slaves that were in the field. And then they treated those slaves that were in the home a little better than the ones that were on the field. So as the slaves were seeing this, they were wondering why. And one of the things that the masters would do would have the lighter slaves in the home. So once they see that the darker slaves, the darker slaves were on the field, they would, treat them a little better. So this was brought up to colorism. Now they amongst themselves would not like each other because of how they've been treated because of the master. So colorism started from there and onward until now. And we're going to have like different stories. We have Bianca here and Nita here, our guests that are going to tell us about their story and how they dealt with colorism. So Bianca, we know we have experienced colorism, especially here in the 21st century. And I want to know about your experience dealing with that.
So my experience with colorism, it's a lot.
First, before you really get going,
yes,
tell us your name, your full name, and where you're from, where you were born.
Thank you. So my name is Bianca Friela Marchedes Talakua, and I was born in Indonesia. So I identify as Indo-Melanesian because nationally, I am from Indonesia, but the island of Indonesia contains 17,000 plus different islands. And so there's a lot of ethnicities and a lot of different ethnic backgrounds. And so, so for me, identifying as Melanesian as well is because, my father is from the eastern side of the islands. And before the Dutch colonized Indonesia, his island, Maluku, is a part of a group of other islands known as Melanesia Islands. And so for us, I feel like our history is deeply rooted in colonialism and what happened to Indonesia 350 plus years ago. And so I feel like my experiences with colorism and with my own history and personal background of even being in my own community has been very interesting to say the least, because I feel like it'll be as little as like if I go to school and, they make you fill out these little, when you take tests and they ask you, what is your ethnic background? And it's like either am I Asian or am I Pacific Islander? And there's so many different questions when I would go into spaces where it's filled with other people from my Indonesian community, but they would also not know if I am Indonesian as well or if I'm not. And I'm often mistaken as a lot of different ethnic backgrounds as well. And so I feel like throughout my childhood, I had a weird imposter syndrome, I think, in regards to who I am as a person, who I identify as. And it was a lot for me because for for my mom's island, she's a little bit more central, and so she's a little bit closer to the Western Islands. The Western Islands closer to the mainland they were brown skin as well, but there's been a lot of like mixes and things like that. So some of them had like a lighter skin tone, and then as you go more east, there's definitely darker skin tones. Eastern islands include Maluku, Papua, Fiji, Vanuatu, and all those other islands. And so I feel like growing up, being in my mom's side of the family a lot, I would get a lot of different criticisms about my skin tone and about my hair being curly. And I wouldn't feel like I fit in with a lot of the other Indonesian kids because most of the time they didn't really look like me. But at the same time, I didn't really understand my own history, my own background. I feel like there's a whole other history to that too, because my parents, they kind of got divorced when I was younger as well. And so there's a part of my history that I did reconcile with when I was younger, right? And so being around my mom's community, it was hard because I didn't really understand my own background in regards to the other side, the islander side of my complexion and things like that. And so I wouldn't really understand when people would ask me, oh, like, are you actually really Indonesian? I'm like, I think so. You know what I mean? I mean, how it's so hard for a kid to kind of answer questions like that because it's like, I mean, I assume so, and there'll be little, kids are evil sometimes. Yeah, and so the younger kids, they go up to you and they'd be like, are you sure you're not adopted or this. And I didn't know how to answer because I don't know why I looked different at the time, And so I feel like, and then, and then coming to America and as women of color here, it's not like it got any better. And so beauty standards, I feel like was a big thing growing up for me. Being told to be afraid of the sun, to not get too tan, or being complimented because I decided to straighten my hair that day. And so my experience with that was that when I was complimented for straightening my hair, then I decided to keep it straight for the longest time. And so I straightened it every single day, and it felt like this normal routine, I guess. You wake up and, you put on your makeup or whatever, you go ready for school, and I straightened my hair. That was just a part of my routine. I didn't see it as anything terrible or anything that was like, I don't know, out of the ordinary. It just felt normal to just do it, to feel like, oh yeah, my hair is just a little bit harder to take care of, but the standard of what I should look like day by day was that I was supposed to have this cleaner looking look, and the clean looking look would identify with more of a Eurocentric ideal of straight hair, right? And so, but that's stuff that I don't really, it wasn't until later that I just kind of thought to myself, like, this isn't it. This is not what I'm trying to do. So I feel like my history with that, which I hope I'll be able to go in a bit more with my dad's history and the history of our islands in this podcast in regards to colonization and how it kind of affected a lot of Southeast Asia and Pacific Islands and that region, because the skin bleaching industry is, I think in 2020 they were worth $8 billion, which is kind of crazy when you consider everything in 2020 while everything else was happening, right? The industry still, the industry was still making money. So it's kind of like, what is happening? So yeah, I hope to touch more on that. But I feel like for me, it was a lot of growing up being different, feeling different, being treated like I was different, and not feeling as beautiful as I should have felt when I was younger.
Wow. You said a lot of key things, which we are definitely going to hit on. And I appreciate that, the story that you have given us. Nita, how about you? Give us, who are you? Like, tell us
Hi, everyone.
Yourself.
Well, my name is Nita Salazar. I was born in San Francisco, but I grew up in Mexico from newborn from year 1 until the age of 18. So I grew up in Mexico, completely 100% Mexican. My parents are from Mexico, but I do, I know what you're saying about the family and all the standards with the colors and everything. So I have 3 sisters. We're 4 girls, and one of my sisters has darker skin. So the 3, we have 3 clear skin, and the other one is a little bit darker. And it was very interesting that my mom, since we were very young, she was telling us and saying her pain at the hospital when the family went to visit her, and she said, "Oh, you got your little black ducky." Oh, wow. And she felt very bad because she said that, she felt that it was very, very disrespectful. Wow. And they say, every color should be, it's wonderful. It shouldn't be like criticized or think less. But it's something that my sister really struggled because growing up, she was labeled as the black ugly ducky. Wow. And it was pretty bad, and it really, really affected her growing up. And I saw her experience because she's the sister that I am very close with her. And but yeah, even when I came to this country at the age of 18, I see the difference in colors. I thought that by coming to the United States and having a variety of cultures, having African Americans and having people from the islands will make it better or see less the difference. Right. But still, it's even more highlighted in the difference or the tones of the skin. When I came here, many people told me in the streets, "Go back to your country." And something that I've never experienced before, because I said, I was born here in the States, but because of the color of my skin, and it's not like I am like a darker color. I consider, like, if you see the Hispanic community, I think like I'm in the medium beige colors, how they call it. But yeah, I have experienced many times people telling me in the streets, "Go back to your country," just by the color of my skin.
Do you think they also said that because of your accent too?
Probably, yep. I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Wow.
Because yes, and it's not, many people think that because we are Hispanic, there is no racism between us, but there is, even between Hispanics. And then when you come to this country that is like many, many cultures, many, many skin colors, you see it more.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, I hear a common theme here just from listening to you two, because as a black woman in America, and I was born in America, but my parents, they grew up, they were born and raised in the British colonial West Indies. So my father was born in Guyana in South America, but that's still considered part of the Caribbean for some reason, and is very British colonial. Right. And, he grew up in Barbados, and he grew up in Dominica and Trinidad and Tobago and those little southern islands. And my mother is 100% Jamaican, and that's in the northern part of the Caribbean, so I grew up with that culture. And in the Caribbean, when we lived in the Virgin Islands, because we lived in the Virgin Islands before we came to the mainland. In the Caribbean, from my experience, it wasn't. You see color. You can't not see color. Right. You see shades. But most of my experience is, which island is better than the other island? As far as food or music or culture or whatever. But there's a rich heritage celebrating that, and there's flag waving, but it wasn't, she's, you could see the color, or she's red, or she's high yellow, or she's whatever, but it wasn't like a nasty thing per se, I don't think. And for me personally, growing up in the Caribbean, under that mindset of, it's just about the islands per se, it wasn't just about your skin tone. I didn't experience colorism until we left the Virgin Islands and came to back to the mainland. And because I'm considered a light-skinned black woman, okay? And I didn't know that was a thing with all my naivety, because we left when I was 14 and came here to the U.S. when I was 14, and I started high school. Okay, now high school is so volatile, and like you said, kids can be evil, and I got that. I went to a very multiracial academy, Greater New York Academy, and in Queens, New York. I'm coming from a little bitty island and going to this big concrete city, and all these kids, they were Romanians, people I'd never even met before. They were, people from India, from a lot of the Latino countries. And a lot of black people from the Caribbean and all these other people. I'm like, wow. But the first thing I remember is these girls, I'm trying to fit in. I have an accent from the Caribbean, you know, and I'm trying to fit in and figure out where am I going. And all of a sudden I hear, oh, she light skinned, you know, she's light skinned. I'm like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, who are you talking to? And I didn't understand at that time, you know, that it was a thing. It didn't make sense to me. And I had to figure out what that was. And someone explained to me, oh, they don't like you because you're light skinned. And like you said, Bianca, my hair, you know, the first time I got my hair relaxed or permed or straightened, you know.
Compliments.
It's so straight. Wow, but then I got, oh, you think you're white. That's when that started. Oh. And I was like, what? I had no clue what that meant and how that would affect me for years and years and years, you know. So, you know, because I'm a light-skinned black woman, all of a sudden somebody explained to me, they think just because you're light-skinned that you're better, you know, and your hair is straight, so you're trying to pass for white, you know, the way you talk, you know, you think you sound uppity and all these other things, and I had no clue why that was so crazy, because in the West Indies, at least for my parents, in the British West Indies, okay, that's very colonial. You're supposed to speak proper English. You know, you're supposed to behave and conduct yourself a certain way so you don't embarrass your parents, you know, and embarrass your family. Because my immediate family, my dad is very, you know, he's very dark skinned. And my oldest brother is brown skin. And, you know, my other brother, he's a few shades darker than I am. And my sister, you know, I'm the lightest one in my family. You know, and so when I went to an all-black high school, I went from Greater New York Academy and I went to Northeastern Academy, and that's an all-black academy, and that's where all hell broke loose, you know, and I had to really fight for my identity. So like you had mentioned before, you know, the kids are like coming at you, well, you're this and you're that, and like you're telling me who I am at the point I didn't even know. So I had to really figure that out, you know, for myself, and what this colorism was and why did it exist and why is it a problem? Because back then it didn't seem like light-skinned black women were in style. You know, it was the popular, you know, and I was just like, wow. And then Spike Lee, you know, the famous filmmaker, he came out with the movie called School Days, and it was about that very same thing, about colorism. Yep. And that just like turned on lights and like, oh my word, that's what it is. And it was so stupid, but it was important because of where it came from.
Right.
You know, and we didn't know that. And so when we're experiencing, you know, how you grew up with your father's from that part of the island or this part of Mexico, you know, your mother's from here. And then there's all this like war and fighting because of skin tone, you know, and it was kind of crazy.
No, definitely. And one of the things that, what's his name? Willie Lynch was so successful at, I hate to see you to say that word successful but it's true, it's prevalent till today, is that if you, his idea was if you separate these group of people, especially people of color, they cannot come back together to be, what's the word, be successful enough to overpower another group. So one of the things that they did was if you wanted a job, right, after slavery, if you wanted a job, they would have a brown paper bag test. And the brown paper bag test is they'll put a brown paper bag and place it next to your face. Now, if you're lighter than the brown paper bag, you get the job, right? And if you're darker than the back on the brown paper bag, you do not get the job. So what does that do to the person that actually gets the job? Like, wow, I could actually pass. So I'm actually better than this person that is dark. So he used these tools to make sure that you think you're better than this person when in actuality we are all the same. So it been trickled down to even now, like my nephew and my nieces, they always like team dark skin, team light skin, and I hate that, right? And it's just like, yo, you're just hating yourself, because if you ask a white person, right, even if you're light or if you're dark, what are you? They still gonna say you're a black person, right? There's no significance. You're still black. But in their mind is just like, well, I'm a light-skinned black because I look better, or whatever the case might be. It caused so much division. And one of the things that you were saying, Bianca, that's really essential is what beauty is, right? When I was growing up in the 90s, like the things that were shown on commercials, or the main characters with long hair, blue eyes. Like, I used to watch Hercules. I don't know, Kevin Sorbo broke Hercules, and he had the long hair. And I'm like, man, I wish I had that long hair, because this is what beauty is. Or Fabio. I can't believe it's not butter. You know what I mean? Like that kind of commercial is just like, this is what a beautiful man looks like. Long golden hair, or whatever the case might be. And even for the women, they have to be really petite and blonde hair, blue eyes kind of situation. And it just messed us up, because I'm like, I've never seen people that look like me on television, or you on television, or you would need to on television that looks what beauty really represents. And that impacts us as kids tremendously. I'll make this last point, and then you all could take the floor. There was a study where they had the dolls. I'm pretty sure you remember. Yes. They had a white doll and a black doll. Remember those studies? Yep. And they would have a black kid. It was like, which one is the best doll? And they picked the white doll. Which one is the pretty doll? They picked the white doll. Which one is the nice doll? They picked the white doll. Which one is the mean doll? They picked the black doll. Which one is the ugly doll? They picked the black doll. Which one is the mean doll? They picked the black doll. And then they asked the question, and you can see the innocence on the kid. They asked, which doll looks like you? Right? That messed me up. Yeah. And then and the black kid was just like, the black doll looks like me. And they was like, but why did you say all these evil things about the black doll, and this was the one that actually looks like you? And you could YouTube this commercial, because it's famous. And it just shows you the colorism and the schemes, how it just manipulated and is infiltrated in every culture. So when you, Nita or Bianca, whoever wants to take this question, especially for women, it's really difficult, right? I can't hold you enough. Men, I'm pretty sure it's difficult being dark skin and light skin, but I seen it with my sister. She's darker than I am, right? She's a dark skinned woman, and they used to give it a compliment. You're really pretty for a black girl, for a dark skinned girl. Like, can dark skinned people not be pretty? You know what I mean? Or you speak well for a person that looks like you. You sound like you're white. Like this is the ideal thing, standard, like, to be a white person. So now, growing up in your whatever your culture, how is that depicted? I know it's a hard.
I feel like I need a like. I wish I could grab words and just put it in my pocket so I could pull it out again and use it. But I feel like to start off with that question, if you don't mind me starting off with that, I feel like it's hard for sure. And I think in terms of how, or you're pretty for a black girl, things like that. In my culture, we have something like that as well. And it's so interesting because we have something that, at least in the Eastern Islands, in my dad's islands, and the other Eastern Islands, when they have this word called hitamanis, and it means black sweet. And yes, and it's beautiful, right? When we use it against each other, they say Malucan girl, hitamanis, which means black sweet, and it's beautiful. But when you go to the other parts of the other islands, it's so interesting because they'll also use it to you, right? They'll say, oh, hitamanis. But it's so interesting because when you're amongst your own people in your own community, and you say it to each other, it is beautiful, you know, and it's acknowledging that. But at the same time, sometimes when other people say it, or other people from the other islands who are lighter tone or things like that, you often wonder if it creates some sort of othering of your beauty and your standard of beauty, right? And so like you can consider someone who's of darker skin tone, hitamanis, black sweet, and then there's someone with a lighter skin tone and you're like, oh, she's beautiful. But it's like you're beautiful in spite of your black skin, or darker skin tone, or we can all be beautiful, right? And so it's so interesting because I think the islanders or the Eastern side, when they say it, I think they're taking it back. It's a little bit more of an empowerment and something that is a compliment, but yet in certain parts of the islands, it's and they're not, and I think that's the how racism and colorism is so insidious sometimes because it's sneaky.
Yeah.
You know, because people say, and they're not trying to make any rude comment or anything like that. They're not trying to make you feel bad or anything. They are truly calling you beautiful, and yet this color of your skin tone is still at the forefront of this compliment, right? Like, it's not just you're beautiful, it's that you're beautiful despite of your darker skin tone. And it's a little messy. You know what I mean? And
Very messy.
Especially for children, like you said, you know, it's really, really hard growing up in a community where you're almost gaslighted. You're almost being gaslighted into thinking that that's supposed to be a good thing. And yes, it is in certain circumstances, but then it's not in other ways too, especially when it's communicated in a certain way. And then the other point that I wanted to touch on also is like when the kids looked at the dolls and they were saying, oh, which one's the meaner looking one? That's also very prevalent in my community, and with my dad's story actually, because so my dad, he grew up in the Moluccan Islands. He was doing his thing, and then his family, because of job and work and things like that, they moved more towards the western side, Jakarta, which is the bigger city. Everyone goes there, everyone loves it, and it's amazing. It's like a hustle bustle city. Everyone from all the islands kind of come together, and in the past, or in the future right now, I've used to talk to him about stories from the past. You know, my dad, he's always been a very, very strong and tough person. And I'm like, oh yeah, no one can beat my dad. No one can ever make him hurt or anything like that. And I'll hear stories from the past, which I don't want to share because, you know, he was in a lot of situations where he was defending himself, and the stories that the way he talks about it is very, you know, like this is what I did. This is how I was, you know, and growing up, I'm just like, dang, Dad, you're violent. that's a lot of stuff that you're doing there. You know, that's crazy. And it wasn't until recently when I was able to have like a conversation. We were just talking about stuff. He just, he told me another story of mine, another story from his past. And I was like, wow, there it is again. You know, I finally asked him, were you always like this? I mean, were you always, you know, trying to exert pressure or anything like that? And his answer to me was that, no, I will never do, I'm not a violent person. And everything that I did was because I was defending myself or defending other people. And he was like, so when I was in the Moluccan Islands, I was never like this until I moved to the city. And so he said that when he was in the islands, it was easy, and everyone looked like him. And when he moved to the city, there was a different population, right? People had different skin tones and anything like that. And so he was actually bullied in the city when he was about 14 years old. And so when he was in school, they would comment on his afro, they would comment on his dark skin tone, they'd call him monkey, gorilla, all these other things. They just kind of other him so much. And his family, my dad's family, was so new to the city and this community that finally, as a young boy, he decided that he will never take that sort of backlash ever again. And in turn, decided to exert more dominance over his space, his energy, his family. And so whenever anything happens, he will always fight back. But you know, it's kind of like this cycle of, you know, then they say, oh, wow, the Moluccans, the Ambonese people, like they're violent, they're this. But in a way, like you push this young boy to kind of, he didn't know what else to do, where it's like either he was going to be pushed like this or he decides to stand up for himself and, you know, figure it out. And I was, you know, when I was talking to him, obviously I got super teary-eyed, and I was telling him, I was like, Dad, I wish I was with you back then. I wish I was already born. I could help you and defend you too, because it's heartbreaking to hear that, especially what happens to children growing up. You know,
that psychological damage has long-lasting effects. Totally understand that.
Yeah, and it wasn't like he was crazy as if he killed people or anything like that. No, I think it was just like, you know, when you're younger and you get into a lot of fights and things like that, you know, and hearing those stories as a little kid, you're just kind of like, wow, you like to cause trouble, you know, you're a bad kid. But then his reasoning for that was, you know, it was really mind-blowing to me, because I'm just like, oh, he didn't pick the fights. The fights came to him, and he had to defend himself. And to do that, if it was going to make him look like this violent child, then so be it, because he had to defend his family because no one else looked like him.
Oh, wow. Well, in our Hispanic community, many of the, like you mentioned at the beginning, the lighter skin color they were considered the most able, the most the ones that they can get the job, the ones that they can be in commercials or in TV.
Yeah.
Growing up in Mexico, I was like, watching TV, looking at this amazing models, blue eyes, blonde hair in commercials in Mexico. And then when I started doing some research, it's like, where is she really from? They were from Brazil, from Venezuela. They were not even Mexicans, but they were representing these people as Mexicans, like how a Mexican should look like. Even like we have a famous artist, Luis Miguel. I really thought that he was Mexican, but no, he was from Spain. And he was adopted into Mexico. Have you heard him singing? Like Luis Miguel, he's like a super famous, but he's not even Mexican. He was lying. He was like telling people that he was Mexican, and people believe it until the truth came out, and they're like, hey, he's not even Mexican, but he got adopted. But later on, so everybody was like, this is how a handsome singer should look like.
Wow.
And of course, and still is like that. In our Hispanic community, people with lighter skin, it's considered most intelligent, most capable to get the job. With darker skin, they're considered Indians. They're like from an Indian background, so they're just mixed. They're lower. Still like that. Growing up in Mexico, there was not a lot of colored people. So when an African American or dark skin person comes and tourist in Mexico, everybody just was like taking pictures with this person because it was very, very, very rare, but it was very beautiful. But yeah, and something important that I wanted to tell you that so dark skin color, it's not very. You don't see it on TV in Mexico. They don't get like, if you see people and CEOs, you don't see people with dark skin. They have lower chances to get there. Another thing, growing up, this was always mentioned at home. When you get married, you need to get married with someone lighter skinned than you.
Yes.
Because the purpose is to make our family look better. All the since growing, right?
Yep.
Do you grow up like
time.
that? That's it.
That happened to me too. Like I dated a Hispanic woman, and one of the things is I'm just like, well, coming from New York is kind of different. Everyone, you're Hispanic, you're black, kind of thing, right? But there was like certain, like especially if you're Puerto Rican, Dominican, Mexican, it's just like, okay, we're all in the same, cool. But if it was like outside of that, it's like, well, I can't date with you because you're too dark, because my father and mother, like it's not a thing. So I'm just like, wow. It hit me different coming, leaving New York and hearing that. I was just like, but you're Hispanic. Like, I thought we were all black kind of thing. Because New York City and Brooklyn is just like a mix of people that I was just raised around Hispanics and black people. So it was just like coming outside of that, I started meeting white people and more whiter Hispanic people. And it's just like, they had that mindset. And it's detrimental, right?
Yeah.
It's detrimental to the human race. And my question is, especially as a Christian, how does that impact us, right? Like even now, we have a colonized version of Jesus. Yeah. Like it took so long for me to understand that Jesus is not white. And that thing, when I actually found that out, I was like, that was mind blowing. Why is Jesus white? Like I'm in a French-speaking church, a Haitian-speaking church, and there's a white Jesus in the background of the baptismal pool. Right?
Yep, I hear you.
Like,
yes.
Everywhere I go, it would be like a white, like I go to a Hispanic church, there's a white Jesus.
With blue eyes.
With blonde hair, like the same kind of concept of Jesus. Like, how does that affect us as Christians? And anyone could take that question.
Those depictions growing up with the white Jesus, because we grew up with the white Jesus. Because if you look at the definition of what white is, and just the color itself, and then the definition of brown or black or whatever. Could there ever be a brown Jesus or a black Jesus based on what the definitions are? It doesn't fit, because for some reason society puts like the color black, like my pants are black or something, that's evil or bad or contrary. White is pure. It's genuine. It's unstained, and so
I don't want to cut you off, but you just made me think about something. Like, especially in movies, like when they have like a good character, they're always in white. There's a bad character, there's always in black. I was just like, that's a trend. But continue.
No, but it's true though. That is definitely true. So who do they have as like the villains or the servants in in certain movies? Who are the ones that are pushing the go-karts or whatever throughout the cities in these big cities? It's usually a darker skinned person, and those depictions, those images, especially for a white Jesus or a black Jesus, or a brown Jesus or a Jewish Jesus or whatever, Jesus is Jesus. And we're all created in his image, right? No matter what color we are, right. No matter what ethnic background we come from, he is who he is. And he's not going to judge us by, oh, well, you're a dark-skinned black person or a light-skinned Mexican woman or an Indonesian woman from the eastern part of the islands. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to be that way. It is so not going to be that way. So the implications are for, if we continue to look at each other and do this hierarchy of color, we can't put Jesus in that hierarchy of color because there's no hierarchy with him. There isn't.
Right, just today, I was teaching Bible to my freshman class, January 2022. I showed them a picture and how National Geographic and all, they think that Jesus was a picture of Jesus. They were surprised. Like, what? Jesus didn't have blue eyes and long hair. Like, are you serious? This is 2022, and they still they still think that Jesus was just like that. He was blonde, handsome.
Blonde-haired,
and I said, I didn't know that he was not that handsome. Like, I was like,
yeah. It's sad that even today we have to teach kids different. Yeah. And even the fact that we know that Jesus was, according to the Bible, he was born in the Middle East.
Right.
In a rinky-dink little town. Right. And
it would be hard to hide him in Egypt if he was white hair, blue eyes, if Egypt is in Africa. Yes.
Exactly. No, but you're absolutely right. And I think images and where they came from, the ideology that Jesus is this, I think man created Jesus in man's own image. Ooh. And therefore to make man more comfortable, made Jesus the way he wanted to see Jesus. And that's why there's all these forces of evil against us, fighting against, who's better or who's worse. The Sudanese people, and they're like almost as dark as my pants, and they're beautiful people, but oh my goodness, the treatment that they get versus someone who's coming from Norway, from the mountains, and how they get treated. So we have to stop that because it's very divisive, and we're unable to see ourselves as brothers and sisters if we have these hierarchies and we build these images, create these images for our own self of beauty and what beauty is. Because God created beauty, he is beauty. Right. And because we're created in his image, male or female, we are beautiful. Amen to that. So no matter our skin tone, or the cities we grew up in, the islands we grew up in, the countries we grew up in, we have to say, what, when these things present itself, it rears its ugly head, like the colorism or even racism or whatever, we've got to be intentional about interrupting, those damaging words or images, that have caused us decades to get over, and start repairing and mending, the bridges that have caused division. But you have to call it what it is when it presents itself.
That's true.
And then you have to say, now that you know what it is, get rid of our biases, and you have to start working toward, unity.
Actually, it's so interesting. In comment of what you were saying earlier about man making Jesus in, their image, because in a way that's also kind of when little kids and us, growing up and things like that. I feel like that's where it becomes the jarring head of colorism comes in, and it is jarring growing up as a child. You know, you talk about these things as in, yes, Jesus is made in our image, and you look at him and it's like, but that's not me. But yet it's like Jesus is associated with, especially because when you're looking at white Jesus, right? Fairness, being saved, everything else that we think of, and then and then whiteness is just as it becomes the standard of what human is, you know. We project whiteness as this concept of being fair, beautiful, and all these things, and in the end it's like that's the standard of what a human should look like, if that's the image of God. And then growing up, it's jarring to see that, because then all of a sudden you are dehumanizing yourself without even realizing it, because you're like, I don't even see myself in this image, you know.
Yep.
Exactly.
Can I be saved too?
That's definitely, you hit that on the point. And another key thing that I would like to highlight is that as Willie Lynch was divide and conquer, Satan used that same tool. We're all created in God's image, right? But yet we're here to say, well, I'm team dark skin, I'm team light skin. I look better because I'm fairer or I'm darker, whatever the case might be. It causes division, where we're all part of that body of Christ. We all were created in God's image. So I look like this, God looks like this. But if we just have this depiction of your sex, well, not let me not change that. If we all have this colonized version of Christ, it's just, it brings division, especially. Like, there could be a white Christ, there could be a brown Christ, but if globally, like, Jesus is known as to be a white man, it just caused the division and hierarchy and classism. And that's what we need to break down within our communities, because colorism is attacking our community. Is these things that we prejudice against people that looks different within our community. Yes. So if we break that down, we could actually become together, become one, and do what God actually wants us to do. One of the things that I definitely want to touch on before we simmer down is the social media, the marketplace, as you mentioned, like the beauty things, the beauty supplies that make your skin fairer, the beauty things that, like, $1 billion industry is true. Like, there's a lot of celebrities that you had once seen them with dark skin tone, and now they look so totally different. Like, Michael Jackson was one of them. Sammy Sosa right now, I don't like that. He's one of them. Like, it's crazy if you like the day and night kind of aspect of it. And what are your takes on that, especially with social media and the products that are out there?
Well, what I've seen most recently is British Vogue, I believe, the magazine, the British Vogue magazine did a cover of, I think it was maybe 8 or 9 South Sudanese models. Beautiful women. I mean, their skin was midnight ebony. Beautiful women. I was like wowed. And then it came out that the British Vogue magazine was getting some backlash because they found out that they were somehow, I don't know what you call it, airbrushed the women's skin to make it darker. And then they were upset because the women didn't wear their natural hair. They had weaves or wigs or whatever in their hair and didn't allow the women to wear their natural hair. And so they said, well, is this a true depiction of who they are? If you're either lightening or darkening their skin, like they do with a lot of these other women, like Beyonce or Gabrielle Union or whomever you see, they lighten their skin so they're more presentable to the public. Go figure that. But in this case, it was different, you know? And so they got a lot of backlash for that. And even in Jamaica, the skin lightening, some women have become very sick because they're using these creams or whatever to lighten their skin so they're more pretty or presentable or desirable. You know, so again, it's that psychological damage that has been done because of, you know, colonial beauty and what that means for women of color, men of color.
I mean, I feel like in Indonesia was something that I was frustrated for sure was just these unrealistic beauty standards and the skin whitening and the skin lightening. You know, I feel like my biggest frustration is that I feel we've been colonized for 350 plus years. We got our independence back and whoop-de-woo. That's awesome and amazing. But yet you may not be colonized physically, but yet you're still colonized mentally. And I cannot deal with that fact because I don't understand. It's really tough, you know, because it's not this big obvious country leading you over or anything like that, but it's little things like that, you know, from the media and what is presented as what's beautiful. My aunt recently just sent me a little Instagram post, and she was really proud of it. It was this Indonesian girl, and she was like the forefront of this research. And I was like, oh, wow, research. Amazing. That's super, super awesome. We want to be proud for our people, you know, if you're out there doing cool things. I looked at the post in her study, and it was, she found a way to lighten your skin without the use of products. And my aunt was like, isn't this amazing? And luckily, I'm not 12 anymore. So I've learned how to be able to stand up for myself as at the same time, you know what I mean? And the thing is, like, again, it's not like she's trying to say that to make a comment or to say something in that way, but I think it's so ingrained mentally that she doesn't see it as anything bad. It's a success, right? Like, wow, this person's doing a great thing for our country. She represents us. It's amazing. And I had to sit there and be like, nope, it's not that great. That's not a good study that she's doing. That's really bad. She shouldn't be studying that, because you shouldn't be looking for different ways to do this, you know? And when I don't know what's going on back in Indo right now in terms of that study, but I don't know if she's seeing it this way and if other family members are seeing it the same way, right? Yeah. And so it really affects a lot of us, because right now even you still see it as something that they want to do.
Yeah. As soon as I arrived to San Francisco from Mexico City at the age of 18, I got my first comment saying, go back to your country. I went back home and I told my aunts, and then they said, it's something that you should do and all Hispanic women do here. They change the color of their hair to lighter. So if you can change your skin, you should change your hair. So because the color of your hair and your skin, if they're lighter, they might accept you more.
Wow.
And as a culture change and the shock that I had right at the beginning, because I was also learning English and I had a lot of trouble and it was another story. But I did that. At the age of 18, I started like dyeing my hair and blonde, almost white, just to be able to match and to get accepted in the city. Yeah. If you see many Hispanic ladies, they do that here in the States. They change their hair color. And it's beautiful. Dark is beautiful. Brown is beautiful. But they do it because they want to be accepted by society and by high school, you know, have better experiences. But yeah, they do that.
And that's part of code switching. You know, because I remember back then with a lot of black men, you know, going into the workplace with like an afro or with, you know, dreadlocks. And yes, I'm saying dreadlocks, you know, is a big no-no because that's scary. You know, who do you think you are? Or you know, coming in with, you know, all power to the people with your afro, you know, or with your dreadlocks, that's scary. You know, what are you doing? Smoking marijuana? So there's all kind of connotations with how our hair is supposed to look. You know, black women, if I didn't straighten my hair, I remember one time in the workplace, I wore my hair out, just, you know, wash and go, a natural look. And my boss was like, oh, that's different. I'm like, yeah, it is, you know? And because I didn't like flat iron it today, I just let it go. And she's like, oh, it's so curly. I'm like, yeah, it is. It's my natural hair. And I'm trying so hard not to be sarcastic, you know, but it wasn't working very well. Why does it do that? I'm like, what do you mean, why does it do that? No, I am kid you not. She's like, why does it get so curly like that? I'm like, it's because of the way my hair grows right out of my head from the day I was born.
She didn't attempt to touch it, right?
Girl, no, hallelujah, she did not. No, thank God that did not happen. That would have been a different outcome. But those are the things that we have to try to, you know, reintroduce people to what beauty is, and it's not in their image.
Nice.
Yeah. And did you want to say something else? Because I wanted to read a scripture.
Yeah. This will be the last thought, anyways, because I don't want to.
Yeah, before I forget. And this scripture, I think, pulls together how God wants us to be unified as brothers and sisters. And I have learned from you, because I didn't know, about all those things in Indonesia, and the Melanesian islands. I had no idea, and from you, Nitsa, as well. Like, we all have something to learn from each other. Exactly. And, no matter where we're from, or regardless of our skin tones, good grief, I can't believe it's still an issue, John 17:23 says this. It says, may they, meaning us, all of us, be brought into complete unity to let the world know that you have sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me.
Nice. I like that.
So, what's at stake here? Colorism leads to what?
Division.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And this was saying the opposite. It said to what? Be
Bring unified. Yep.
Absolutely.
And that's what we want to teach you all in this podcast. Please do the research and definitely be mindful of certain things that you might just say, I guess, without thinking, because it does play an impact, especially to different cultures, to different people. And we just need to do better, because we are here to be one people that serves one God, so we could actually continue to bring actual light into this world. We're not supposed to be so divided, because once you're divided, you get conquered easily. So let's just bring back unity within ourselves and within God, because He doesn't do this whole division thing. So hope you enjoy the podcast, and thank you, ladies, for being here with us and
thank you so much
and speaking your truth. We appreciate
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.